Reddit's S1 filing out this morning showing it's looking to raise up to $748 million at a $6.4 billion valuation. The social media company issuing 22 million shares between a range of $31 to $34 per share. We'll see exactly where that price is right before the IPO, setting aside about 1.7 million shares for certain platform users. Now, this will be the first major tech stock launch of this year. So what should investors be watching for? We've got Greg Martin, Rainmaker Securities Managing Director, here with us. Greg, great to see you this morning. What should investors be watching for? What type of reception do we expect Reddit to see once they make their public debut?
Well, thank you for having me. Good to see you again. This is an interesting one because, we're getting restarted again, especially in the tech sector. And I think a lot of people are, heavily anticipating this one. Reddit's going out with, I think, a pretty aggressive valuation. If you look at the comp set, and their revenues last year were somewhere in the neighborhood of 800 million. And their comp set trades in the kind of the 5 to 7x range, and the company didn't really grow that much last year. So, I would have expected them to be filing or more in the 4 to 6 range, and they're above that. And so, they're clearly trying to sell, an AI story. They talk a lot about, selling their data to large language models. They refer to a recent deal that they did with Google. So they're trying to differentiate themselves from who I think their comp set would be more like Pinterest and Snap, who I said, trade more in the 5 to 7x revenue range. So I think they're trying to tell more of an AI story than just a media story. But the challenge they have is that 98% of their revenues are advertising. So it's going to be very interesting to see if they can really push, hey, we have all this data and there's more of an AI driven story here than just a regular, social media story.
And Greg, they're also setting aside nearly 1.8 million shares for Reddit users. Now, that group will not be subject to the lockup period. I bring this up because what is that going to do to potential volatility here and what we could see once the stock opens?
Also very interesting. I think that, one of the issues that Reddit has had is that they've, been private for a long time. They've been sort of this non-commercial place where, people could talk about their interests freely. And of course, they created the whole meme stock platform with some of their stock forums, and I think it's something that they're concerned with. There was a little bit of the users were not happy in some cases, and so I think they're trying to placate their heavy users. They're trying to provide them with an incentive to sort of be positive about the stock and the company, and that's why they're giving them these shares, but they're going to create, as you point out, a lot of volatility. These are retail investors. They will probably trade in and trade out. Normally, you like to place your IPO with long-term holders. So I think we're going to see a lot of active trading, and Reddit is worried about being a meme stock on their meme stock platform. So I think it's something that we got to watch very closely.
Not just worried about being a meme stock, also worried about the reality of sustained profitability here too. And looking through some of the numbers, net losses incurred of about $158.6 million in 2022, and then trim that to $90.8 million in 2023. All these things considered, is Reddit a company that has positioned itself well enough at this juncture to enter into a market as an unprofitable company and investors be able to believe that they're going to reach that profitability and sustain it over the longer term?
It's a great question. Like I said, the numbers, they aren't growing, at a level that, you would expect to see at 20%, as I pointed out. They're not profitable at this point. So there's some challenges that they're going to have telling the story. I think it's why they're so focused on, hey, we have all this data, we have all these users that are contributing this data. This should help any LLM train their models. It's unique, it's proprietary, and so a lot of what they talk about pre-IPO here is the AI story. Obviously Sam Altman's a significant investor, and Sam Altman is Mr. AI. So I really think they're trying to push that narrative. But the reality is, as I said, 98% of their revenue is advertising. They are a social media company. They ought to trade in a manner similar to Pinterest and Snap. And I think that's going to create some valuation challenges for them, especially since they're not profitable.
Greg, taking a step back, the success of Reddit's IPO, just how much is riding on this public debut when we talk about the potential for more tech IPOs in the pipeline this year?
Listen, it's definitely going to be closely watched. There's a huge backlog of tech IPOs. This is going to be really the first big one of the year, and so people are going to just want to see what kind of demand there is. Now, as I said, they're not growing that much. They're not profitable. Their story, while unique, is similar to several other social media stories, and so it doesn't jump out at you as being super different. But it's the beginning, hopefully, of at least we hope to see fairly stable and strong demand. We hope to see some reasonable aftermarket performance. I'm a little surprised that they're going with an aggressive price, because I do think the market needs to see strong aftermarket performance, and it feels like they're being priced to perfection. But we will test whether the AI story holds legs. We know that there's significant demand for AI type companies, and so if Reddit can cross that chasm from being just a traditional social media company to be more of an AI story, we know that's where a lot of the interest lies in the market right now.
Just lastly, while we have you here, Greg, is Reddit the IPO that is expected to open the floodgates, perhaps, as a test case for companies going public this year?
Well, as someone who has a vested interest in seeing the IPO market, reopen with some of my portfolio, I certainly hope so. It doesn't feel like the true shot in the arm, at least if I were projecting what the market will need. We have a pretty strong market, so there's a lot of other positive factors in the market that will hopefully push, successful IPOs to come. I can tell you that just the Reddit filing, just Reddit being on the road, has definitely stimulated a lot of other companies to push their IPO process along. So I do think that interest has already been created, but I think people are going to watch it closely. And I hope that ultimately they create a little bit of an IPO bump for their investors, and that the backlog of IPO-able companies really starts to open up. But I think it'll be a little more of a trickle. I don't think this will be the huge shot in the arm that everyone is hoping for.
All right, Greg Martin, always great to get you on here at Yahoo Finance. Thanks so much for hopping on with us this Monday morning.
Thanks a lot.